Death, the battle, and Sagittarius, a curse activated in the birth chart. There is a kind of soul that carries within it a destiny map filled with life and death crossroads. They don't choose the battle, but the battle chooses them. They do not seek death, but they are constantly called to face it. They are Sagittarius, warriors of the light, bearers of the curse of awakening. And today, that curse is being activated. It's no coincidence that you are hearing these words right now. Perhaps the universe is trying to help you remember a part of your soul that's long been forgotten. Death, the battle, and Sagittarius, this is not just an astrological tale. It's a sacred journey waiting for you to step into. I know you've felt it before. A vague longing, like a battle is happening inside you, unseen by anyone around you. A battle between light and shadow. Between faith and doubt. Between the yearning to live a meaningful life and the exhaustion of a soul that has broken too many times. If you carry the energy of Sagittarius, or if your chart's key planets fall under this sign, then you are not just a person searching for ideals. You are part of a divine mission. Your birth chart does not merely record your date and time of birth. It is a spiritual code. A calling. And sometimes, hidden within it, an ancient curse is activated when you enter the most pivotal stage of your life. I did not come here to instill fear. I came to hand you a key. To help you understand why death arrives. Why you are pulled into inner battles. And more importantly, why Sagittarius? Why you were chosen to overcome them all. Let your heart remain open. Because what comes next might change the way you see your life forever. There is one truth not everyone is ready to face. That sometimes, the light doesn't come from the sky, but from deep within the darkest shadows. And for Sagittarius souls, this is not a metaphor. It's reality. It's their life. Pluto, the planet of death, destruction, and rebirth, when it touches Sagittarius energy, it does not merely create an astrological aspect. It awakens an ancient curse, a soul cycle, where Sagittarius cannot avoid pain, but is granted a sacred chance to transmute darkness into light. I still remember a dear old friend, a Sagittarius born in the winter of 1968. In his birth chart, Pluto sat right in the 12th house, the house of secrets, inherited wounds, and unresolved karma. Throughout his childhood, he lived in a broken home. He lost his mother at 4. His father drank. And for many years, he lived like an exile from the world. But strangely enough, he didn't drown in resentment. Instead, he read, studied religion, studied philosophy. And by the age of 30 he became a minister, helping thousands overcome addiction, trauma, and the same kinds of pain he once endured. You see, that is a Sagittarius soul, forged through Pluto's fire. One who does not flee death, but turns it into a language of life. One who does not deny the darkness, but learns to walk through it with the torch of truth. To me, this is no longer about astrology. It's about the soul. Because some people were born to carry the pain first, so that later they could lead others home. And Sagittarius, when passing through Pluto, always carries such a mark. Have you noticed? Sagittarius people often have a very particular smile. Not the carefree kind, but the smile of someone who has known pain, and still chooses to love. The smile of a warrior, who no longer fears the dark. But to earn that, they must go through a journey no one sees. A battle in silence. In spirit. In the heart. Sometimes, the world doesn't understand them. Labels them as unpredictable, as rebellious. But in truth, they are not rebelling. They are searching for a deeper meaning in life. And are willing to tear down what's false to get to the essence of what is true. And Pluto never lets anyone keep their illusions. Have you ever felt that way? That despite living honestly, kindly, life still keeps throwing pain at you? Losses that make no sense? If so, maybe, just maybe, you are living out a sacred journey you haven't yet fully understood. I believe this. People like that don't come to live ordinary lives. They are sent to awaken something bigger. And what they learn is never just for themselves. It's for the world. In classical astrology, it is said that Pluto, when linked with fire signs like Sagittarius, ceases to be just a destroyer. It becomes the soul's strictest teacher. The one who is not afraid to break your old self. So you can rise as the most powerful, truest version of who you were meant to be. Have you ever felt that way? That your life, no matter how kind and sincere you've been, keeps pushing you into painful circumstances? Losses that seem senseless? If so, perhaps you're carrying within you a sacred journey that even you don't fully understand yet. I believe that people like this are not sent here to live ordinary lives. They are here to awaken something greater. And what they learn is never just for themselves. It's for the world. In classical astrology, it is said that Pluto, when aligned with a fire sign like Sagittarius, is no longer a destroyer. It becomes the soul's strictest teacher. One who is unafraid to shatter the old self, so that you may become the strongest and most truthful version of who you were meant to be. A curse? Perhaps. But I prefer to call it a divine directive sent from the cosmos. An advanced trial meant only for souls unafraid of falling. Because they know, at the bottom of the abyss, lies the foundation of the mountain they will one day stand upon. Dear one, if you're living through a cycle of loss, through inexplicable breakdowns, trust that this is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of awakening. And Sagittarius was never created to die in suffering. They were created to be reborn, more powerfully than anyone else. Pause for just a second. Close your eyes. And ask your heart. What am I fighting for? And am I willing to walk through this darkness, to become who I was created to be? If you hear a whisper of, yes, then you're stepping into the very moment the curse is activated, or rather, the moment your sacred destiny is unlocked. And if what I've shared touches something deep within you, leave a comment. I am ready to face the darkness, to awaken the light within me. This is not just a declaration. It is a vow, to yourself, and to the soul you carry. Because in the end, you are not alone. Souls that carry light are always connected, no matter where they are on this earth. And when a Sagittarius rises through Pluto's fires, they are no longer just a survivor. They become a guide. One who dares to live, dares to die, and dares to live again, with every truth blazing in their heart. Please remember this, dear soul. Everything you have gone through is not punishment. It is preparation. Preparation for something far greater, so vast, you may not yet be able to imagine it. And once you begin to understand that, once you truly unlock the gift hidden within the curse, you will step into an entirely new chapter. A chapter where you no longer ask, why me? But instead begin to say, thank you for choosing me. When a soul begins to understand the darkness, the universe sends another kind of message. Not to warn, but to empower, softly, yet with immeasurable force. Is there another planet, more powerful, more sacred, quietly summoning the light bearers to return? And when a Sagittarius rises beyond Pluto, they are no longer a survivor. They become a guide. One who dares to live, dares to die, and dares to be reborn, with every truth blazing in their heart. Remember this, dear one. Everything you've gone through was not meant to punish you. It was preparing you for something far greater, so vast, you still can't fully imagine it. So if you can still hear that faint calling within your chest, don't silence it. Because somewhere in this vast universe, a higher force, more generous, more compassionate, might be softly calling your name. Not to make you fight harder, but to welcome you home to yourself, fuller, stronger, and more aligned than ever before. There are moments in life when you no longer want to fight. Not because you are weak, but because your soul is simply too tired. You start to wonder, was I born just to endure all this pain? And then, something deep within you whispers. An ancient, noble part of you stirs. As if you suddenly remember who you once were, and what you were entrusted with long ago. That is the moment Jupiter begins to move. Unlike Pluto, the force of destruction and rebirth, Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius, is the planet of expansion, of faith, of divine law. But make no mistake. This is not the fragile faith borrowed from books. This is the kind of belief that can only be born once everything else has been lost. Those who carry Jupiter's energy are not born to obey. They are born to lead. But ironically, before they can guide anyone else, they must first get lost themselves. I once witnessed a Sagittarius woman, in her 50s, once a lawyer. With everything, a career, a family, a solid faith. Until she lost her son in a tragic accident. Everything inside her broke. She left the church, left her office, and left behind everything that once defined her. But instead of falling into despair, she returned to the Bible, not to beg, but to have a conversation. Then she began teaching at an orphanage. She started speaking with the homeless every morning. And soon, people began calling her the street pastor. No robe. No cross. But she had the one thing a true warrior of faith needs. A heart that had once been shattered, and still chose to keep loving. To me, that is Jupiter. Not glory. But greatness born of compassion. A kind of strength that makes you no longer want to fight to win, but to live in service of something far more sacred. Have you ever felt that way? That you no longer want to argue about right or wrong, but simply want to find what is true, what is holy. If you've touched that moment, leave a comment below. I am ready to live with faith, not just talk about it. Those words, they don't just hold you accountable to yourself. They're a reminder to someone out there that they're not alone on this path. In ancient astrology, Jupiter is known as the great benefic, the giver of blessings. But few know this. Before it grants you anything, Jupiter takes away everything you once believed was yours. So you can learn to trust in something greater. For Sagittarius, this is not just a lesson. It is a calling. They cannot live a small life. Their minds always reach for a farther horizon. They cannot tolerate what is false, nor turn a blind eye to injustice. That's why they often get drawn into sacred battles, not with weapons, but with wisdom, with faith, and with a life lived in raw, unapologetic truth. I often tell this to Sagittarians in despair. You were not born to have it easy. You were born to have purpose. Not everyone will understand that. But you will. You are hearing these words, not by accident. Perhaps your soul is being called back to the front lines. Not the battlefields of the world, but the battlefield within your heart, where faith and fear wrestle every single day. Jupiter, as the great guide, does not command you to act, but it will continually press you toward the edge. So that you must choose. Will you stay in the shell of safety? Or will you live out the light that was planted in you since the beginning of your soul? Are you ready? Are you ready to look in the mirror and say, I know I was born for something greater. Not for fame, but because the light I carry might light the way for someone else. If these words stir something in you, don't stay silent. Leave a sign. Comment. Send this to someone you trust. We are not alone. And Jupiter never awakens a soul, unless that soul is truly ready. You see? When Jupiter begins to whisper, it means a divine summons has been issued. And when a Sagittarius hears that call, nothing ever stays the same. Because eventually, after getting lost, after fighting, after losing, the soul begins to long for something deeper. Not just meaning, but sacred purpose. And from that longing, another door will open. A door leading to a gift that's been hidden. Beneath the pain, beneath the ashes. And only those Sagittarians brave enough to walk to the end of themselves will ever see it. People often admire Sagittarius for their strength. For the way they rise after failure. For how they smile even when their heart is breaking. For how they keep believing in the light, even when no one is there to remind them it exists. But there's something few people ever see. The price they pay to keep that light alive. Not every Sagittarius carries a life of suffering. But many do, especially those with Chiron or the South Node in this sign. And they carry what I call a silent curse. They are often betrayed by the very things they believe in most. They believe in friendship, and are abandoned. They believe in love, and are deceived. They believe in religion, only to be hurt by the very spiritual community they once called home. I once spoke with an elderly man, a true Sagittarius. Once a priest, trained at a prestigious seminary in Europe. He told me that for decades, he lived in faith. With no doubts, no hesitation. Until one day, he discovered that what he saw within the sacred institution completely contradicted everything he had been preaching for years. His heart shattered. Not because the truth was harsh, but because his faith had been tied to that community. And when he left it, he wasn't just leaving a church. He was leaving behind an old version of himself. Do you know that feeling? That the very thing keeping you connected to life is the same thing that hurts the most? That is the pain of Sagittarius. A curse with no obvious form. But it weaves itself into their deepest relationships. Into their biggest dreams. Into the places where they have poured all of their trust. But you know what's miraculous? Within that collapse, a gift begins to emerge. Because once Sagittarius loses everything on the outside, they begin the real journey inward. And what they find there isn't borrowed faith. Isn't an ideal shaped by society. It is a living truth, born from experience. From wounds. From the moments they fell and got back up again. At that point, Sagittarius is no longer a preacher. They become a living embodiment. They don't speak of love, they live in it. They don't define truth, they become it. And that is what makes them truly powerful. I'll never forget a small gathering in Texas, where I listened to a woman share her story. She had been deeply hurt in her marriage. Betrayed by her husband. Estranged from her children. Her life falling apart. One day, in total despair, she wandered into the woods. Sat beneath an old tree. And simply cried. She had no prayer left to say. Until she stayed silent long enough to hear a voice rise from within her. You don't need to understand. You just need to be present. From that day on, she stopped searching for answers. She chose to live in the truth she could feel in the silence. That love had never left, even when the world did. She began writing. Not to be famous, but to heal. She didn't know that her simple handwritten letters would one day become beams of light for thousands. Still wrestling with the dark. Do you see now? The greatest gifts are never found in what is shiny. They're often hidden in what you once hated. In the person who hurt you the most. In the memory that breaks your heart. For Sagittarius, the gift lies beneath the dust of betrayal. of loss, of the loneliness that lingers far too long. But when they are brave enough not to turn away, when they have the courage to sit with the wound without letting it consume them, that gift begins to shine. And that light is never just for them. If you're listening to these words, and you see part of yourself in them, please leave a comment. I am learning to turn my wounds into gifts. Not because you need attention, but because that sentence might become a lifeline for someone out there drowning in the dark, still unsure how to name their pain. I believe this world does not need more perfect people. What it needs are those who dare to live truthfully, who dare to fall, dare to rise, and dare to say, I am no longer who I once was, and that is grace. What we call a curse is sometimes just another name for a lesson not yet fully understood. And when you finally understand it, you realize that not everything taken from you is a loss. Often, it's the universe clearing the path for something miraculous to arrive. Because in the end, when a Sagittarius has walked through death, walked through battle, walked through their own becoming, they are no longer just a survivor. They become a flame bearer, a path opener, someone the universe calls to new ground, where they no longer live only for themselves, but for a purpose far greater than their own. A mission awaits them. A destiny waits to be remembered. There is a moment in life when you've cried enough, fallen enough, lost enough, and you are no longer who you used to be. No one has to declare it. No ceremony needs to be held. No trumpet sounds the start of a new chapter. You just know. There's no going back. For Sagittarius, this is not surrender. It is a silent vow that from now on, life is no longer just about surviving, but about serving something more sacred than the self. When a Sagittarius rises after the cycle of Pluto, after the wound of Chiron, after the loss of faith, they no longer walk as someone seeking direction. They walk as a guide. No title needed. No validation required. Their light alone is enough to illuminate a path. In the birth chart, when Sagittarius appears in the 10th house, the house of career, public mission, and influence, it signals those born with a calling to be teachers, to be inspirers, to be spiritual guides, or to be those who expand consciousness on behalf of the collective. But do you know what it takes to stand in that place? They must be willing to give something up, to let go of what we call safe, normal, stable. They must walk through the voice that constantly whispers, "Am I really enough?" I remember a friend, once an actress, a public figure, always glowing on stage. And then she disappeared. For 6 years, no one saw her. She had reached the limits of herself, where the spotlight became nothing more than an empty mask. She wiped off her makeup, left her fame behind the curtain, and chose silence, as if it were an unanswered prayer. No social media, no press, no scandal, just disappearance. When she returned, she didn't speak of that time. She simply released a small, simple book about her journey walking through over 12 countries, barefoot, with no money, just to find one answer. Who am I, if I am no longer beneath the stage lights? Have you ever asked yourself that? Who are you, if you no longer have a title, a role, a person to lean on? That question is one of the most sacred a soul can ever ask itself. And when the answer comes, the mission begins. For those who carry the Sagittarius spirit, mission is not a job. It is a way of living. It is the alignment between what you believe, what you say, and what you do, even when no one is watching. Because what they serve is not the world out there. It's the truth within them. And that truth, when lived fully, has the power to heal entire communities. I once met a man from Mexico. He could not read or write, did not speak English, once worked as a migrant laborer. But in his village, he was known as a curandero, a healer. Not because he had a medical degree, but because each day, he knocked on every door in the village. Not to ask, but to listen. He didn't offer pills. He offered presence. And you know what? Presence, when it comes from a Sagittarius soul who has walked through the dark, is magic. You don't need to become someone else. You only need to return to the brightest part of yourself. And from there, you will radiate something others may not be able to name. But they will feel it. If you feel your mission is starting to rise, leave a message. I am ready to walk into my mission, with a bare heart and a pure truth. No need to be extraordinary. No need to be perfect. Just be real. Because when a true Sagittarius rises, they don't change the world with arguments. They change it with the presence of a soul that chose to live authentically. And you know what? In a world spinning in illusion, that is a revolution. The world doesn't need you to be a superhero. The world needs you to live in your light. Even if that light only shines one small step at a time. But each of those steps, if taken with the heart, will lead you to places you never dared to dream. Because a soul is not sent to earth just to survive. A soul is sent to live fully. And sometimes, to do that, you must look back at all the battles you've faced and realize, I am ready. Not because I am stronger, but because I now understand more clearly what I was truly born to do. And dear one, when a Sagittarius has lived through it all, when they've risen from loss, from doubt, from the depths of loneliness, an invisible gift begins to emerge. Not fame, not glory, but peace in their purpose, a state no outside force can shake. You might be wondering, where does all this lead? After the light is lit, after the mission begins to rise, what waits on the other side of this journey? The answer doesn't lie in what you accomplish. It lives in how you feel. A quiet knowing that you've lived true to the deepest part of your soul. Despite whispered judgments. Despite expectations that never belonged to you. Despite the silence from those who once promised they'd stay. And right there, where you no longer need to prove your worth. No longer need to chase the light outside. Where you simply show up as you are. That is when destiny truly begins to reveal itself. Because sometimes, death doesn't come to take. It comes to end a version of you that has expired. So you can be reborn, fully whole. And the battle? Perhaps it was never meant to destroy you, but to prepare you for a role you never dared believe you were worthy of. You are still here. And if you are still listening, it means a part of you has already been awakened. A part that perhaps you'd forgotten, or were once afraid to face. But today, you didn't run. You've walked with me through the story of death. Not as an ending, but as a gateway. Through the battles. Not to prove anything, but to understand that it is in our breaking that we are forged into our truest selves. And you have touched the energy of Sagittarius. Not just as a zodiac sign, but as a soul that lives, burns bright, and never stops hungering for meaning in a chaotic world. If every word you've heard feels like a reminder that you were born for more, then believe this is no illusion. You don't need to be famous. You don't need to write books. You don't need to speak on a stage. You only need to live each day with a heart that refuses to go dim. Because just one person who dares to live honestly is enough to shake a world that's forgotten what that even looks like. Maybe you felt too sensitive, too different, too tired from always having to be strong. But dear soul, it's precisely because you feel that deeply you were chosen to be a healer. Because you've seen the darkness, you carry the flame. Because you've fallen, you now know how to hold someone else's hand as they fall. If these words have stirred your heart, don't let them pass like a breeze. Leave a sign, a simple comment like, "I am ready to live true to my soul's purpose." That sentence, it isn't just for you. It's for those still lost, still trying to find themselves through this voice. We are not alone. And energy always finds the hearts that beat on the same frequency. Before I go, I hope you remember this. You were not sent to this life to prove your perfection. You came to become real. And no storm, no matter how fierce, can ever extinguish a heart that burns for truth. Especially not the heart of a Sagittarius. To you, the one who carries both the curse and the blessing in the same soul, may you always have the courage to let go of what no longer is you, the peace to welcome what is coming to make you whole, and enough light to remind yourself each morning, I am still here. I still believe. And I am ready to live true to my destiny. Until we meet again on another journey where other flames await their awakening. Keep walking, because the universe is watching every step you take, in quiet reverence and in love. Keep walking, because the light at the end of the path belongs to those brave enough to walk the entire length of their own.